During any debate about white privilege or the pay gap,
we are literally 2 seconds into this video. Don't make me press this button.
You'll usually come across this common argument. But what about Asians?
I made a dumb face when I said it, so you know it's wrong.
They make more money than all of us, right? Well, wrong. From books like Crazy Rich Asians,
I'm pretty sure the Crazy Rich Asians in Crazy Rich Asians are not supposed to be indicative of every Asian person. Hence the crazy.
To characters like London Tipton from The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody.
Did anyone make the connection between her being rich and her being Asian? Like, you're not wrong, she is rich and she is Asian, but I don't think anyone ever really connected the two. I don't even think they mentioned that she's Asian on the show. Did anyone watching the show ever, like, come to the conclusion that she was rich because she was Asian?
The archetype of the super wealthy, educated Asian American is a common one.
Is it? Because this is honestly the first time hearing of it. Smart Asian, sure, but rich Asian is a new one for me. The only time I've heard people bring up Asians and money is, well, as you said.
During any debate about white privilege or the pay gap.
And there it's just being said as a counter against your argument about, well,
white privilege or the pay gap.
You're the one trying to use people's earnings to prove that there's some sort of discrimination going on, because white people and men make more money on average. When people bring up Asians' earnings, they're just pointing out that, hey, if making more money means that you're privileged, then Asian people must be more privileged than all of us, by your own argument.
And it didn't come out of thin air. Asian Americans do earn more than white Americans on average. But what the data rarely shows.
Oh, would you look at that? The person who was bringing up the pay gap just a minute ago is now saying that maybe we should look at the data more closely. Right, so men make more money than women. Must be because of discrimination. Whites make more money than blacks. Must be because of discrimination. Asians make more money than whites. Well, we can't just take that at face value. Data can be misleading after all. There are a lot of factors that go into this.
Is that economic inequality is a huge problem in the Asian American community. And to help me talk about it, I've enlisted the help of my friend Lily Dew.
Thanks, Francesca.
Oh good, she's Asian. That means this must be true.
Contrary to what you might believe, not every Asian American is spending their days sipping caviar and eating champagne.
Nobody believes that.
2014 study found that while Asian Americans generally earn more than white people, they also have a much higher rate of poverty.
Much higher? By like 1.5%?
Plus the, what about Asians?
I made a condescending face when I said it, so you know it's wrong.
I guess you'll call it an argument.
Good. Because it is an argument. Just because you don't like it doesn't mean it's not an argument. Hell, even if the argument's wrong, it's still an argument.
Hides huge disparities amongst different Asian ethnic groups. Indian Americans earn twice the national average in median income, while Vietnamese, Cambodians, and Bangladeshi families are at the very bottom of the list.
Well, that still sort of leaves the same dilemma. Just instead of asking, what about Asians, you should be asking, what about Indians? It still disproves the claim that white people are doing better off than everyone else, because there are other ethnic groups who are doing even better than they are.
So this begs the question, if not all Asian Americans are making it rain,
nobody thought that to begin with,
and many are extremely far from it, where did this stereotype come from?
It didn't come out of thin air. Asian Americans do earn more than white Americans on average.
Well, like most bullshit, it starts with a, what's the measurement for racism again? Ton of racism.
Okay, when you're on a platform that censors out certain words, don't make your entire joke revolve around the word that you can't say. Also, is it really like that much racism? Like, it's not just a regular amount. It's a beep ton. Is saying that Asian people tend to make more money when they do really this incredibly racist act?
But maybe not the type you usually hear about.
Please say reverse racism. Please say reverse racism. Please say reverse racism.
The myth of the model minority.
Ah, if only, if only. Wait, what was that again?
The myth of the model minority.
Okay, never mind. That's even better. The myth. The myth of the model minority. It's a myth. There are no minorities who succeed. They don't exist.
A fairy tale of white supremacy.
Ah, yes, when you want people to believe that white people are better than everyone else. So you go around telling everyone that Asian people are better than everyone else.
Designed to draw a wedge between Asian Americans and other people of color.
So simply pointing out the fact that Asian people make more money on average drives a wedge between them and other races? Doesn't that mean that every time that you make an argument that white people have some sort of privilege, that you're driving a wedge between white people and minorities? How about when you pointed out that Indian people make quite a goddamn bit more than other Asians? Are you driving a wedge between Indians and other Asians?
Let me tell you how it works.
Can you, stop talking like that? It's really annoying.
The myth came to prominence in the wake of World War II.
After the end of World War II, the world was split into two, East and West. This marked the beginning of the era called the Cold War.
You know, after Japanese Americans were literally sent to internment camps by the US government.
Ah, yes, I remember that war, where American and Filipino POWs were literally marched to death by the Japanese army. You want to bring up unrelated war crimes? Let's bring up unrelated war crimes. I can play that game too.
And plays on the idea that by being hardworking, education-focused, and family-oriented, Asian Americans found success and overcame the massive amount of discrimination and institutionalized racism they faced since the 1800s.
Okay, seriously, please stop talking like that.
The goal of the model minority myth was twofold. One, which was kind of legitimate,
Remember that. I'm holding you to that one.
was to explain why Asian families were doing so well economically in the 20 years after World War II. The much more insidious part was to also reinforce damaging stereotypes about blacks and Hispanics as lazy and uneducated.
Okay, if you keep talking like that, I'm gonna start fast-forwarding through all your dialogue.
Basically, the model minority myth is used to ask harmful questions like, geez, if Asians can make it in America, why can't blank do it as well? But here's the thing, it wasn't hard work, education, or assimilation that helped some Asian Americans find more success than other people of color. It was opportunity brought on by, wait for it, less racism.
Ah, so it was just a ton instead of a ton? You see, that's what happens when you bleep out your punchlines. The whole joke's ruined. You can't understand what I'm saying. Also, if the point you're trying to make here is that people are less racist towards Asians, why did you bring up Japanese internment? Seems like that goes against what you're saying.
New research has found that what actually helped Asian Americans was American society simply becoming a tiny bit less racist towards them.
Just a tiny bit? They got launched all the way to the top of the economic ladder, and it was only because of a tiny decrease in racism? That's all it takes? They are literally doing better than the people who are allegedly trying to keep everyone down, and that's all just because of a tiny bit less racism? If that's the case, why aren't, for example, black people as well off? Surely people are more than just a little less racist towards them than when they weren't allowing them in the same schools or to drink from the same water fountains. There's two ways you could look at this. One, the reason why one race makes more money than another is because society is less racist towards them, not for any other reason. If that's the case, then that means that society must be less racist towards Asians than it is towards whites, because Asian people make more money than white people do, on average. Or two, society doesn't like Asian people more than it likes white people, in which case there must be some factors other than racism that affect how successful you are. And those factors may very well be things like
hard work, education, or assimilation.
Also, you said earlier that Indians are way at the top while Vietnamese people are way at the bottom. Does that mean that people are the least racist towards Indians? Are they the most racist towards Vietnamese people?
In 2016, researcher Nathaniel Hilger found that between 1940 and 1970, Asian Americans, regardless of education level, started being paid like white people. What happened was that both college-educated Asians and Asian high school dropouts began to make the same as college-educated whites and white high school dropouts, which prior to that time period was not the case. Plus, in 1965, the passage of the Immigration and Nationality Act eliminated a huge bias in favor of European immigrants and drove in a new group of highly selected, highly educated Asian immigrants. For example, 51% of Chinese immigrants to the US are college graduates, compared to only 4% of adults in China.
So wait, before you were saying that Asians were doing better regardless of education status, now you're saying they're doing better because more of them are educated?
Now, you may be thinking,
but really, what's wrong with believing all Asian Americans are hardworking, highly educated, and flush with sweet, sweet cash?
Nobody believes that all Asians are rich.
Isn't that a good thing?
well, no, not really. Believing all Asian Americans are rich is just as bad as believing that Dev Patel, hello, and Aziz Ansari,
Where do you want me to fuck you?
are the same person. They're not.
Okay.
Well, certain stereotypes may not seem all that bad on the surface, but the rich Asian American myth actually erases the experiences of a large part of the Asian American community. It allows people to ignore the economic disparities faced by other groups like Vietnamese and Cambodians.
Isn't that the same problem, though? Like, instead of saying Asians make blank amount of money, you're saying Vietnamese make blank amount of money, or Cambodians make blank amount of money, or Indians make blank amount of money. You're still collectivizing people, you're just collectivizing them into different groups. There are poor Indians, there are rich Vietnamese people. Isn't collectivizing Indians into one group and saying how much money they make and doing the same thing with Vietnamese people the exact same problem as lumping all Asians together? You're still, as you would say, erasing the people who don't fit into the general trend.
Plus, lumping in all these different ethnicities into one broad Asian category and focusing on averages masks the wealth disparities between very different ethnic groups.
I think you just made the same argument twice in a row.
Who doesn't love being erased? So with the help of the model minority myth, it becomes easy to ignore the fact that in New York City alone, more Asian Americans live below the poverty line than any other minority group at 27%.
Well, hold on, now you're lumping all Asians together.
But they receive less than 1% in state funding. 'Cause all Asians are doing fine. I'm fine. I'm great.
MTV pays you money to talk down to people on the internet. You are doing fine.
Poor Asian Americans are being seriously overlooked when it comes to things like government funding and aid for seniors, which is a double tragedy since we all know that Asian grandmas are stylish as
I can't tell if you're being sarcastic or not.
Back to you, Francesca.
Look, we have to face the fact that all stereotypes are harmful. It was so embarrassing because they were exactly what you would expect, right? Like this one kid got up there and he maybe was like 18, 19, he was very young, and he could barely string a sentence together. He was like, do you think that women victimize themselves? I was like, what? Like, speaking to the mic, have you ever used a microphone before? Like, it was embarrassing, but it was also very telling because he is clearly the type of person who goes on the internet and talks like mad shit.
You know he was affiliated with that group of people that was there just to try to rattle.
Oh, yeah. Even the ones that seem good on the surface, because the rich Asian stereotype leads to a lack of visibility for the issues that poor Asian Americans face.
You know what, Franny? You're absolutely right. You can't just go around lumping people into groups and telling them that just because they're in that group, they're better off. It's misleading, it's overly simplistic, it's divisive, and it's just not nice. Say, what was it you were talking about before?
White privilege.
Lovely.
And because they're ignored, this ridiculous cycle is allowed to continue. So no, not all Asian Americans are rich.
Thank you for telling us what we already know.
And just because some are, doesn't mean we get to pretend like racial, gender, and economic disparities don't exist.
Nobody was saying that they don't exist. They were just disagreeing with you about where they are and why they happen.
Sorry, not sorry.
Yes, great. See y'all in like a month or whatever. Wait, hold on, guys. One more thing. I just realized something pretty woke. In the movie Black Panther, they go to a casino in South Korea. All the Koreans in there are rich. Does that mean that Black Panther is racist against Koreans? Is Black Panther a white supremacist film?
Now, sure as the sun will cross the sky, this lie is over. Lost like the tears that you